At its core, remote viewing is a form of practiced precognition. It's also an active meditation practice, and the more you do it, the better you get at perceiving information outside of linear time. In fact, the more remote viewing you do, the more your precognitive faculties tend to open up more generally. Benefits that are similar to most other meditation practices. The key with remote viewing, however, is the feedback stage. Feedback is the money shot. This is the part of any given remote viewing session where you're shown what your target was after you completed the actual viewing. Feedback can come in a number of forms, like in this example, as a photo, or in the case of a financial target, the chart for the time frame you're viewing would be the feedback. At the end of any given session, or once your feedback shows up, whenever that happens to be, it's important to do a detailed review of the feedback against your remote viewing session to determine how accurate your data was. This will be the focus of this series. Most remote viewing teachers agree that completing detailed review of your feedback for any given remote viewing session is where the bulk of the learning tends to happen. In this episode, we're going to feed back a couple of associative remote viewing sessions that I completed with my ARV team. ARV is a little different than conventional remote viewing because it's used to determine outcomes of binary events, the kind of binary outcomes you might find in sports gambling, for example. There's even apps that you can use to train associative remote viewing, like the free RV Tournament app. The cool thing about RV Tournament is that it also tracks your stats. At the point where this screenshot was taken, I was hitting almost 70% on my ARV. Associative remote viewing sessions are a little bit less intensive than a typical remote viewing session. Usually you only do the first couple of stages of remote viewing for an ARV session. Like in this example where I only did stages 1 and 2. You can see that my session for this target had some similarities with the actual result. For example, the arch of the bridge, the flat bridge deck, and the water underneath the bridge. ARV probably deserves its own episode. If you want to start to finish ARV example from RV Tournament, check out this video above. Typically in binary ARV, there are two potential images that could be your target. Which one is correct depends on the actual outcome of whatever event it is that you're trying to do an ARV on. In the case of a sports gambling ARV, your target would be the image associated with the correct outcome, whether that's a win by one team or the other, an over-under, or something similar. In the case of RV Tournament, the correct target is whatever the computer selects as the right image. Your goal is to remote view the correct target image. The reason this is more difficult than regular remote viewing is that there's a lot more noise in an associative remote viewing session. So your subconscious can get confused and do something called displacement, where you get pulled towards one target or the other, which may or may not be the actual target associated with your goal. When you're trying to determine between two targets instead of just one, things get a little bit more complicated. If you're new to remote viewing, I recommend sticking with single targets to begin with. But ARV can also be a lot of fun. Trying to actually make money with ARV is even more complicated because it adds an entire other layer of subconscious stuff that you have to deal with. Since about May of 2025, I've been working with a professional associative remote viewing team. We've primarily been doing sports betting, and we've had pretty good success. Runs of 70 to 80% are not uncommon, and I'm going to show you how I do my feedback on these sessions. This particular target series shows our results, remote viewing and betting on the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs. While I definitely did some limited feedback on each of these sessions, I haven't taken the opportunity yet to go through all of them in detail. So in this section, I'm going to do some detailed review on a couple of these sessions. As you can see, I completed this session on the 2nd of June, and our target was a hockey game on the 4th of June. That's when I got my feedback. We actually ended up doing 2 targets for this particular game, and we got both the over-under and the money line bet based on our remote viewing data. On this particular session, the first thing that came up in my ideogram was this spike, or at least the first thing that jumped out at me. I generally feel these kind of spikes in the ideogram as being structures or man-made. There was also this kind of sense of something round and this sense of something flat, as well as a downward movement of some kind. Clearly the structure is there, and there is a large flat section as well. The up to down movement could have been these fountains. They actually come up on page 2 as well, but you know what, I'll give myself some points for that too. Moving on to the stage 2 data, I had the color blue, gray, black, white, and light green. I would say that all of those colors are present here for sure. I also had this kind of sharp noise like clapping or snapping. I'm not really sure what that is. I had a metallic texture, which is certainly there. This chlorine and pool smell, as well as these little shapes, these 4 shapes. I think those 4 shapes were probably referring again to these 4 fountains, as well as the chlorine and the pool smell, because I'm certain that these fountains would be chlorinated. There's also this feeling of bending or flexing. I mean, you can kind of look at the shape of this. I also got dimensions that were up to down, as well as some across, and this sort of pointy thing, which again, it's definitely there. The AOLs weren't necessarily on point. Person on a diving board, I think what that was pointing at was the idea that there's something high up. Maybe not so much a diving board, but the presence of this water was also probably related to that AOL. As you saw, I wrote whirlpool here as well. And finally, after this kind of sensory information, I moved on to my emotional information. So what do I feel at this site? And I got this kind of feeling of intensity, like this fear in my throat almost, that felt like a fear of heights. So I wrote scared of heights, which again I think correlates pretty well here. So on page 2 of my session, I did the sketch of my target. This is stage 3 of the remote viewing process. Generally, different remote viewers have different approaches to stage 3. Mine is just really to do a fresh ideogram after I've done my other stage 1 ideogram and my stage 2 sensory and emotional data. So I started this as I normally do. I did an ideogram here, just kind of tracing it around. Again, I got kind of this spiky stuff, this sort of flat bit, and again this kind of this weird splashing piece that looks like water splashing. And I wrote analytical overlay splash. Dolphins. I got dolphins and penguins. This AOL of one of those drinking birds. One of those ones that looks like this, I guess. I thought that was an interesting AOL. I think really on this page the important bit was the splash. This water, like that's obviously a clear dead ringer for this fountain that's spraying up. Again, I think this drinking bird thing was just a long, thin structure along with water. That's really what that AOL was trying to tell me. So I mean, this page doesn't have a lot of great data, I would say, but in associative remote viewing, you're really trying to just do a quick session and scrape as much data that's relevant as you can to identify your target in post. And I think I did that here. Like this spraying of water feeling, I thought maybe it was fire or something too, but I think that's really just the light kind of shining through the water, like over here. But really that kind of clinched it for me, along with the other data that I had on page 1. So that's pretty much it for this target. This was a different target for a game on June 6th, which we also bet and won, as you can see here. The Florida Panthers won this game, and this was the associative remote viewing target we got with that. Just the stage 3 data for this one, my sketch of the site. You can see I got a pretty solid session here. I wrote nature scene with water and life, land in the distance. And so, I have this wavy stuff here, the water. You see it kind of coming up, the water coming up to the edge of a structure like here. And then you have these other protrusions, a couple protrusions, sort of up above, so that had some pretty good correlation there. I did write, again, anything I missed. I got this sense of life. Presumably there's a person in one of these buildings, or certainly one taking the picture. And the big thing that popped out when I cued myself on whether I missed anything was, again, this structure and the waves. So again, tall structure, and waves. There's also this AOL that I wrote, something hitting the water and making waves. So I thought maybe it was a boat, but really it's the water hitting these structures and making waves. So, I mean, maybe that's a boat back there. I can't really tell. Hard to see, but either way, the kind of gist of the target was definitely contained within this data. And it's important to know that before I saw this picture that represents the target, I did all this session completely blind. So I'm only seeing this feedback after I've completed the session. So why is feedback so important? I mean, it's where you find out what your blind target was and what kind of details you got right in your remote viewing session. When you're actually in a remote viewing session, you don't really know whether or not the data you're getting is right or wrong. And you don't really know it until you've seen that feedback. The important thing with feedback is that it kind of reinforces those impressions you got in the session. The thing it seems to teach you is what real data feels like. And the more you practice, the better you're going to end up doing within the session. You're going to develop that feel for what data is actual data, what's signal, and what's noise. And again, the best way to do that is to practice and to be diligent in your review of your feedback, because feedback is where the learning happens. Thanks for watching this video. If you learned something today, consider liking and subscribing, and let me know in the comments what other kind of content you want to see on this channel. I want people to learn about remote viewing. I think it's a really important practice. As I've mentioned before, it tends to open you up precognitively, and once you start opening up to precognition by doing these little time loops of remote viewing sessions and playing with your own sort of future memory, it really can have significant and positive impacts on your life. If you want to learn more, you can also check out the Rockstar Intuition course, link in the description below. And if you're interested in getting a personal consultation, I do those too. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.